90 minutes is the standard time of a World Cup football match. This summer, the American taxpayer will spend $55 million per match, $611,000 per minute the game is played. Despite the excitement and prestige, is being the host of the world's most watched sporting event really worth it? Welcome to the Econopoly channel. Today we're covering the financial and economic impact of the World Cup. The story the public is sold is one of economic stimulus. For instance, projections say that $17.2 billion will be added to the US GDP and roughly 185,000 jobs are on the line. It's a very good narrative, but when we look beyond the screaming crowds and underneath the pitch, we find a bigger and darker story of backroom deals and a transfer of wealth from the public to the private sector. Let's look at the raw data, affected sectors, and FIFA's new economic model. FIFA is overseeing the biggest World Cup ever, 48 teams, 104 games, and a $3.7 billion budget. FIFA anticipates a revenue of $8.9 billion for the tournament, adding to a total of $13 billion this cycle, a 54% increase from the 2022 Qatar World Cup cycle. Some analysts at the World Trade Organization claim that the World Cup will generate $30.5 billion in gross economic output for the US alone, but critics will point to reduced hotel bookings and structural problems that place any net positive economic benefits into question. To illustrate this, here's a structural bottleneck that every World Cup host deals with. It's baked into the event, a supply shock. The host city needs to find a way to absorb an average of 350,000 visitors every day that clog the existing and hopefully new specialty-built transit, tourist, and sanitation infrastructure. Cities try to justify the large capital expenditure needed to host the games by pointing to the uptick in tourism as a multiplier effect. The argument is that foreign tourists will be a boon to the local economy by eating at local restaurants, seeing the sights, and generating revenue vis-a-vis a sales tax that will repay the city's debt. The main problem is that this effect may only last for 39 days. The 2026 World Cup is from June 11th to July 19th. Can a local economy benefit enough during the event and then adapt their new infrastructure to recoup and amortize the investments they've made for the tournament? The evidence tells us most likely no. Let's look at the effect of the World Cup on national economies and municipal budgets. Host countries spend big when FIFA comes to town, but the truth is, historically, 12 of the last 14 World Cups have ended in big financial losses for the host countries, which amount to an own goal for the local economy. On average, the last 14 World Cups cost the hosts between $18 and $22 billion, with West Germany spending about $650 million on the low end, and Brazil and Russia spending $15 billion and $11.6 billion respectively. Qatar spent the most, $220 billion, which is equivalent to the nation's entire economic output for 1 year. The main factor that determines how much a country spends is their existing infrastructure. We can see that until the 1990s, nations were spending under $1 billion before the rise of large capacity stadiums and high-tech security. In Qatar's case, they started from scratch. Qatar basically built an entire city, a metro system, and 8 new stadiums. Qatar's World Cup was more of a vehicle to build the nation and promote it to the international community than it was a football tournament. When we compare the usual experience for World Cup hosts, we run into a phenomenon called a white elephant, which is a huge infrastructure spend with next to zero post-tournament value and utility. For example, we can look to Brazil's $550 million Mané Garrincha Stadium in Brasilia. A decade after Brazil's World Cup, the stadium was hosting domestic soccer matches for a crowd of about 400 people, a terrible underutilization of seats. In Russia, their stadiums need permanent government subsidies just to avoid falling into total disrepair. One would think that due to existing infrastructures, stadiums, and the like, that North America could avoid the white elephant problem. But there's other financial issues that will plague a World Cup host. For example, in May this year, the Canadian Parliamentary Budget Office, or PBO, reported a serious warning. Despite only hosting 13 out of 104 games, the PBO revealed that the true cost of hosting the World Cup in just Toronto and Vancouver will be over $1 billion, with analysts estimating America's cost at $5 billion. When we divide the 13 games, each hosted by Canada and Mexico, you get a $76 million price tag per game. And as said in the introduction, The US's price per game is lower at around $55.5 million. For Canadians, one of the stadiums where the games are being played is being upgraded, BMO Field, aka Toronto Stadium, and the city's budget is $380 million. It's owned by Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, or MLSE. The MLSE is a private, multi-billion-dollar monopoly. Filings show us that MLSE is contributing only $18 million of the roughly $70 million for additional land purchases and stadium enhancements required to meet FIFA's compliance codes. Another issue to think about is the opportunity cost. All the investments being made into World Cup infrastructure could have gone to investments in the public, like improved roads, affordable housing, community projects, and more. Another big expenditure of the games is in security. Looking at British Columbia, another host of the Cup, we see the combined local and provincial safety and security costs have ballooned to an estimated $242 million. An event of this size demands a high level of perimeter control, cybersecurity, and counterterrorism infrastructure that is a challenge for any state or provincial budget. This is a clear example of mispriced risk that dates back to when BC was selected as a host province, and the taxpayer is now covering this error. FIFA has completely restructured its economic model. In the past, FIFA would run the tournament through local committees that would absorb the costs and share in the revenue. Now FIFA completely organizes the World Cup by itself and works directly with the host cities, while controlling almost all the revenue. This is basically a franchise model, where the cities are the franchisees, they pay to operate the tournament, and FIFA collects the money. The new model puts added financial pressure on football fans. In 2026, FIFA introduced dynamic pricing, a virtual marketplace where ticket prices fluctuate in real time according to consumer interests and availability. In theory, this would result in fairer pricing, but in reality, it's placed a premium on later stage and popular matches, which can now cost thousands of dollars. So if you want to see the final match in New Jersey, you're looking at up to $7,875 for a Category 1 seat, and FIFA has zero incentive to lower the prices. Victor Matheson, a sports economist with Holy Cross, told Fortune magazine, quote, "FIFA is not coming back to the United States for another 30 or 40 years, which means you can afford to make that ticket buyer angry today and squeeze all of the money out of them you can. FIFA is banking on a smaller group of wealthy ticket holders to generate the bulk of the ticket sales revenue." In the same Fortune article, Victor Matheson sees this as taxpayer exploitation. He says, "Asking taxpayers to subsidize a profit-maximizing event when you're simultaneously asking for handouts from regular taxpayers is appalling, and forcing blue-collar workers to pay higher taxes so the wealthy and upper-middle class can see games in shiny new stadiums is absolutely one of the worst pieces of public policy out there. For the average World Cup tourist, the cost elasticity of tickets can severely hurt their budget. A family of 4 could easily spend $3,000 on tickets in a hotel room, which means their discretionary spending will most likely reduce. They'll spend less on souvenirs and local restaurants. When they go out to eat, they probably aren't eating at the local mom-and-pop diner or even going to see local museums and other local attractions. The money they do spend most likely goes directly to official, tax-exempt FIFA Fan Fest vendors, thus replacing the tourists that normally come to a city during the summer with FIFA-exclusive customers. We call this the crowding out effect, and it actively starves the very local businesses that the tournament is marketed to help. Let's talk more about hotels. World Cup tourists naturally require a place to stay, and the hospitality sector was ready to cash in. But hotels just aren't making the money that FIFA promised. Advanced bookings across Canada and the US and host cities are lagging the initial forecast, with approximately 80% of properties experiencing half the revenue and occupancy levels that industry analysts and FIFA estimated. To make matters worse, hotels are reporting lower occupancy rates than last year. This means that World Cup reservations are cutting into the revenue that local hotels usually receive in the summer from annual meetings and conventions. In response, FIFA has released tens of thousands of hotel bookings made years in advance for FIFA staff. The American Hotel and Lodging Association, or AHLA, blames FIFA for making these bookings in the first place, creating a shortage of available rooms which drove up prices. According to the AHLA, 70% of those reserved rooms were later released in host cities. The hotel industry is trying to adjust by focusing on lounges and pubs, with the hope that food and drink sales can offset room losses. A big factor that puts host cities into difficult financial arrangements is FIFA's leverage, which in the the past has been synonymous with corruption. In 2015, the US Department of Justice unsealed a 47-count indictment in a scandal the media called FIFA-gate. FIFA executives were involved in a racketeering, wire fraud, and bribery ring which ran the gambit of FIFA activities, from host selection and bidding to broadcasting rights. Broadcasting rights alone are worth $4.3 billion and have grown by about 30% in the past 20 years. Former FIFA president Sepp Blatter was charged and later acquitted of fraud and financial mismanagement, but was forced to step down and was banned from all FIFA-related activities for 8 years. So FIFA will assure us that they've cleaned up their organization with a new president, Gianni Infantino, but the underlying coercive tactics remain. Infantino has been widely criticized for his close ties with the Trump administration. In courting the current US administration, FIFA has been silent regarding the banning of its own officials from attending the tournament. There are also heavy travel restrictions. Fans from Haiti and Iran, for example, are banned from traveling to the US entirely. Visitors from many qualifying nations face visa rejection rates higher than 40%. The countries that are most affected are from Africa and the Middle East. This has also impacted hotel occupancy rates, as discussed earlier in this report. As said earlier, FIFA doesn't share any of the revenue streams from tickets, sponsors, and media deals, which would normally help a host city offset the massive costs in preparing for the Cup. It takes years to secure the hundreds of millions in federal subsidies to make the World Cup a successful event, but after the final match and the fans go home, the cities will be left holding the bag for maintenance of the newly expanded stadiums and other infrastructure without any additional funds to support it. The World Cup acts as a domestic macroeconomic shock. The ultimate winners are FIFA and private asset owners. The ultimate losers are the municipalities, and by extension, you and I, the taxpayer. The public buys the stadium and upgrades and pays for security, an own goal that's hard to come back from. The private sector and FIFA get to run up the score day after day, year after year. We've published a one-page intelligence brief. It's a visual summary of the video, World Cup mechanics, and analysis of who's profiting off the structural imbalance. Download it now at econopoly.com, link in the description below. Until next time.